non-confrontational, non-competitive format. Therefore, they will appear separately, not side by side. Each candidate will give opening and closing remarks and will be asked a series of audience-submitted questions on topics chosen in advance. The candidates will be asked the same question on 4 topics: education, foreign policy, health care, and the Second Amendment. Each candidate will also be asked separate questions from the audience on 3 topics of each candidate's choosing. Mr. Anderson chose the economy, immigration, and veterans. Mr. Vindman chose reproductive rights, Project 2025, and bipartisanship. Listen to me. We've asked candidates to limit their answers and opening and closing remarks to 5 minutes each. And we have timekeepers to let them know when their time is running out. Now, I'm going to strictly enforce the opening and closing remarks time limits, and I will try to keep them on track on the questions and answers, and just with them understanding exceeding time limits on some questions may limit the time they have to answer subsequent questions. If time after answering the 7 additional or follow-up questions. Now, we got a lot of questions, I can tell you that. So, and I appreciate everybody submitting those questions. We tried to boil them down, the ones that we get most frequently, and that can address maybe multiple issues. We try to pick questions that will hopefully address the issues that seem to be on most people's mind, or more people's mind, or that have a more general approach to the issue, or a question about the issue. Candidates are not allowed to have materials, props, or other visual aids on stage with them. Because this is not a debate, they are not allowed to engage with each other, and they are expected to be respectful and professional at all times. So, please do not react audibly to answers, display signs, or do anything else to distract the candidates or infringe on their time or ability to answer your questions. Audience members who cannot abide by these rules will be asked to leave, and there are people waiting for your seat. We also ask that you limit your applause to the opening and closing remarks to ensure that we maximize the time each candidate has to respond to your questions. Now, Mr. Anderson is going first. Derrick Anderson is the Republican nominee for Virginia's 7th Congressional District seat. Mr. Anderson was raised in Spotsylvania County. His mother owned and managed local restaurants, and he worked in one while attending Portland High School. Mr. Anderson was in the Corps of Cadets at Virginia Tech, served in Iraq, became a Green Beret, and deployed to Afghanistan and other Mideast countries. After his time in the Army, he earned a law degree from Georgetown University and worked in the Office of National Drug Control Policy in the Trump administration. He currently lives in Spotsylvania, is a practicing attorney, and serves as a major in the Army National Guard. Welcome, Mr. Anderson. The floor is yours for your opening remarks.
Well, thank you again for having me. Thank you all for being here. Seriously, I really appreciate it, especially the Fredericksburg Free Press, for putting this on and giving us the opportunity to talk to the constituents here in the 7th Congressional District. So I'm from Spotsylvania County, just right down the street. That's where I grew up. My mom, who is, of course, up front, I worked in her restaurants growing up. That was where I started my career, was working in her restaurants, anything from mopping floors to doing dishes to cooking. So if you ever did come to the Whistle Stop, I was the guy in the back that was flipping burgers. They were awesome burgers, by the way. But I ended up graduating from Cortland High School. We were just discussing There are some funny pictures of me from wrestling in high school where I'm on the front page of the sports section of the Freelance Star. I ended up going to Virginia Tech on an ROTC scholarship. I was the first person in my family to graduate from college, which was a huge deal. My mom, thank goodness, my mom was very, very supportive of me doing that and getting an education. I ended up graduating and then went into the Army. So I started off as an infantry officer, went to Ranger School, and then I was in Iraq for 15 months as part of the surge. As many 20-year-olds, 20-something-year-olds are, I didn't know what I wanted to do when I grew up still. So I ended up going up to the Honor Guard up at Arlington National Cemetery. I did about 150 funerals in Arlington National Cemetery. I can tell you, without a doubt, that was one of the most rewarding experiences that you can ever have, is being able to put on that funeral for those loved ones of those service members who either paid the ultimate sacrifice or had a very, very long career in the military. Being able to look that family in the eye and do it with such grace was an amazing opportunity for me. So I ended up, again, not knowing what I wanted to do when I grew up, so I ended up getting selected to go into the Special Forces. I finished all of the training and did 5 deployments as an A-team leader, as an ODA commander in the Special Forces, where I deployed to Afghanistan, Bahrain, Lebanon, Israel, and Jordan. I ended up getting out of the military, ended up going to law school and clerking for 2 federal judges. What got me into this, what made me get off the couch and want to represent, want to serve, was what had happened in Afghanistan. I lost 5 of my guys in Afghanistan, so as you can imagine, what I saw, the disaster that was, it just didn't sit well with me. I was truly upset. I was disheartened. In fact, one of my guys that was killed in Afghanistan's mother, the Gold Star mom, she called me afterwards. She said, 20 years of war, all of the sacrifices that we had put in, and this is what we have to pay for. I couldn't just sit on the sidelines anymore. I was upset. So I decided I wanted to serve in a new capacity. And that's why I decided to run for Congress. So look, folks, I'm a common sense, simple guy. I'm a guy from Spotsylvania County who just wants to make sure the people here in the 7th Congressional District are represented with basic fundamental principles, right? I want to make it more affordable to live. I want to make sure that the cost of goods are down, because right now they're not. I know what it feels like to walk around the district and talk to my friends, my neighbors, my family members who can't afford to catch up right now. And I'll tell you a story later after my opening, but the economy has gotten out of control. We just need to bring common sense values to that to make it more affordable to live. I want to make sure our communities are safe. I want to make sure that the problem that we see at the southern border actually stops, because I can tell you right now, it's out of control. I talked to a lot of the sheriffs in the area, and I can tell you that fentanyl is a huge deal in our area, and people and our law enforcement's resources are being taken up because people are overdosing from fentanyl. We have serious issues of crime in our community that needs to be taken care of, and the first thing we can do is make sure the border is secure. And I want to make sure we take care of our veterans, folks. As a veteran, as somebody who gets their health care from the VA, I want to make sure that our veterans are getting the absolute best care possible, because after 20 years of wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, and all the things that have happened over these years, our veterans, they're struggling, whether it be mental health, whether it be the issues at the VA. So I want to be a champion for that. So again, I appreciate you all allowing me to come here tonight to get to speak with you and give you an idea of who I am and what I'm about and what I want to do as the next congressman here in the 7th Congressional District, because it would truly, truly be an honor not only to represent the people here in the 7th District, but to represent the people that raised me. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Our first question is on education. And I'll remind you, both candidates will be asked this question. How can we address the rising cost of a college education in this country?
Yeah, so just for your background, so I did go to school K through 12 here in the 7th Congressional District. I went to Chancellor Elementary School, I went to Salem Elementary School, I went to Smith Station Elementary School. Yes, they kept redrawing the lines, so I got moved all over the place. But as someone who's a product of the education system here, not everybody necessarily wants to go to college. Look, I went to college because my mom pushed me to do it. Yes, she did. They're laughing. But I did that because that was the path for me. And I think it's important that we have opportunities and options for people to go to school. I was able to pay for my school because my dad jokingly told me, he said, I don't know how you're going to pay for it, but figure it out. So I got an ROTC scholarship. And so that's how I was able to make it affordable for me, was to be able to have an ROTC scholarship. Look, there's a lot of other things that people can do. Like my brother, he didn't go to college. He didn't want to go to college. My brother is more of a hands-on kind of guy. So having opportunities for vocational, for making sure that there's STEM schools, all those different options for school choice to make sure our students and our children are getting the opportunities to actually get out there and work. As far as affordability for college, it's gotten to the point now, if we can get the economy back under control, parents and families can start affording to send their kids to college. I can tell you, the more and more we're paying out of pocket for groceries, gas, all of these things, it's going to continue to make it unaffordable for us to pay for things like college. But again, I think there's other opportunities out there besides college. But again, it comes down to having the opportunity and the choice for parents to send their kids to school. And when we talk about education too, I think it's important nowadays that we need to make sure we're telling our kids how to think, not what to think, right? Giving them the opportunity to go out there and kind of observe the world from their own lenses and make decisions and learn. I think that's really important. But as far as the college education piece, I was able to pay for it by going to school, by getting an ROTC scholarship. There's a lot of programs out there that allow for state institutions to also receive some federal funding. But again, I think it just comes back to common sense and making sure that the economy is back on track so that people can actually afford to send people or their kids to school.
Thank you. The next question is on foreign policy. What is your position on U.S. involvement in the wars in Ukraine and Israel?
So for Ukraine, we'll start there. Let's just be clear, folks. Right now, where we're sitting on the international stage is not great. Our enemies are emboldened right now. See, someone's even upset in the back. Our enemies are emboldened right now, folks. We need to have strong leadership. We need to make sure that our enemies don't feel as if they can do the things that they're doing across the world right now. Specifically, with Ukraine. Look, we need to make sure we're supporting our allies, that is Ukraine, but we need to do it smart. And that's one of the issues. If you look at Ukraine in the very beginning of the war over there, because a win against Russia is a win for the United States, 100%. But when we're looking at the equipment and how we were sending them over, just for a little insight, in the very beginning, we were sending over these things called switchblades, which essentially are mortars that they launch up into the air. You can control them. We used them in Afghanistan. And you were able to control those. Well, we were sending 60 millimeter mortars, which are anti-personnel. We weren't sending them the bigger ones that they actually needed to take out the Russian tanks, the Russian artillery pieces, things like that. So again, when we're talking about taxpayer dollars, if we're going to support, as we should, support our allies like Ukraine, we need to make sure we're doing it intelligently and making sure also that our taxpayer dollars are getting the best bang for the buck. We were sending howitzers over and a few other types of U.S. military equipment, but when we were in Afghanistan and Iraq, we had contractors that were able to fix those pieces of equipment. They don't have that. So I think we need to 100% stand with Ukraine. Yeah, I don't know what's going on over here. Something's beeping. But we need to make sure we stand with Ukraine. Again, when Russia is on their heels, that's an absolute win for the United States. As far as Israel, look, Israel, that's our biggest ally in the Middle East. We need to stand with Israel and make sure that Israel has the resources that they need to win. Look, everyone's talking about, Kamala Harris and Joe Biden talking about ceasefire. The one thing that I have an issue with is when you equivocate back and forth on whether or not you support or not support or what have you, it emboldens our enemies in the Middle East to do bad things. And I can tell you, since October 7th, we've had over 100 attacks on our military installations overseas. And I know firsthand, because I have Green Berets that are still deployed, that are still overseas, doing God's work right now. And one of them just returned earlier this year, and he literally had, I think, 12 guys that had TBI and Purple Hearts from the attacks from these kamikaze drones, artillery. And the problem is that they're not being given the resource to be able to defend themselves. In fact, my friend that was over in the Iraq area, he was told after they returned fire the first time after they were attacked that they need to prepare their defense team. These are our U.S. service members getting attacked overseas and being told that they're not allowed to return fire. I mean, that's a basic principle in the military, is you're allowed to defend yourself from life, limb, or eyesight. And the fact that that is where we're at right now is terrible. So we've got to stand with Israel. Again, Hamas and them could fix this problem very quickly. They could release the hostages. They could release the hostages right now, and Israel could come to the table and they can negotiate a ceasefire. But what we're not seeing right now is Hamas is holding those hostages because they know that is their only tool. And so while that is all going on, and mind you, when there's been a lot of talk about the ceasefire negotiations, all at the same time, Hamas's friends, Iran, and all these other bad actors throughout the region are attacking. Hezbollah just attacked the other day in the northern part of Israel. We had, you've seen the Iranian rockets that were launched, 400 plus of them over into Israel. Look, while Hamas is trying to make themselves out to be the good guys, like they're going to the negotiation table, again, they could fix this problem very quickly by releasing the hostages, and they could 100% tell their buddies to stop attacking not only Israel, but our friends, our U.S. service members overseas. And we talk about gas prices, we talk about inflation, we talk about the economy. There's one thing I can promise you with conflict in the Middle East is that the more conflict, the more gas is going to keep going up. It's absolutely true. So again, look, I'm a Green Beret who literally spent a lot of time overseas. I've been to Iraq, I've been to Afghanistan. I don't want war. None of us want war. But at the end of the day, what Hamas did on October 7th to Israel was absolutely horrendous. And they've kept those hostages for almost a year now. So Israel absolutely has a right to defend themselves. And again, I want to make sure that a strong Ukraine and a strong Israel is a strong United States, because our allies are being taken care of and they're defeating our enemies overseas.
The next topic is health care. Affordable health care has been a topic of debate. It's going to be there tonight. What are your views on America's current health care policies?
So, first and foremost, we want to make sure that people have affordable and good health care across the board. And that's just down the line. I can tell you, my mom is sitting here, so she's going to yell at me, and hopefully she doesn't have any water bottles to throw at me. But when we were growing up, my mom owned restaurants in the area. We didn't have health care. It was too expensive. Mom had 3 kids. She was running a restaurant. She had a gas station. She had another restaurant. We couldn't afford it. Matter of fact, some of these small little clinics on Route 3, that's where I used to get my ear drained after wrestling. I know what it feels like, and it's expensive. It's absolutely expensive, but making sure that we have affordable health care starts with a few different issues, and one of the things I'll diverge slightly is, look, I get my health care from the VA. That's where I get my health care. I am so happy that I've got that health care, especially when I was in school. It was a great thing for me to have. Now granted, it's a government-ran healthcare system. What I can tell you is, as somebody who gets their health care from the VA, and I see some people shaking their heads out there so they know where I'm going with this, there's some issues. There's certainly some issues with it, and we got to fix those problems. But we can get affordable and better health care when we're not having healthcare companies have a monopoly on things, right? When there's competition amongst healthcare companies, it typically lowers costs and increases the quality of care that you're receiving. So good competition amongst healthcare companies is a must. But we see right now, one of the things that's really frightening to me is, we're talking, there's a president, for those who don't know, there's a presidential election this year. So there's a lot of talk, right? There's been debates, they've talked about it. Kamala Harris mentioned, that she's mentioned in the past that she wanted to do Medicare for all. If you think our Medicare system is bad now, if we had Medicare for all, it would destroy our system. Look, I mean, we cannot continue to keep spending, and I don't think that a government-ran healthcare company would be a good idea. I mean, look, we see how they do the VA, and again, I'm happy that I got it, but there's common sense solutions to this, but making sure, and let me be very clear too, whatever healthcare system or the healthcare system I would support is to ensure any sort of pre-existing conditions are still covered. Absolutely. Because we have people with terminal illnesses and things like that, that you can't switch that off of them in the last minute. So again, I think the best way we can get good healthcare is, 1, making sure there's competition amongst healthcare companies, and 2, making sure we got jobs. Because when people have good paying jobs, they have good healthcare. And if we want to do a Medicare for all type system like Vice President Kamala Harris wants to do, That would destroy not only our healthcare system, but it would destroy the whole thing. It would be too expensive, it would be ridiculous, the quality wouldn't be good. And right now, even under Obamacare, we're seeing it's not free healthcare. It's costing folks $400 to $700 for Obamacare. That's not free healthcare. But it's healthcare that's, in my opinion, mediocre. And I think that if we had competition amongst healthcare companies, that, again, if one person comes to you and says, hey, I'm offering you this, and the other healthcare company says, well, I'll offer you this at a lower price, and all of a sudden we start lowering the price and we increase the quality of healthcare that our folks are getting. So again, I want to make sure that, you know, everyone has the opportunity to get healthcare and good quality healthcare, but we got to do it smart, and we got to make sure that it's not going to cost the taxpayer dollars a ridiculous amount of money when the economy is not great.
Thank you. Fourth issue is Second Amendment gun control. Are you in favor of any limits on gun ownership, and if so, to what extent?
Sorry, I had to take a drink of water, folks. Look, so the Second Amendment, you know, we want to make sure that we're not taking weapons out of the hands of law-abiding citizens. And we want to make sure we're going after the bad actors, right? The criminals, people with severe mental illnesses, right? And that's what we're seeing right now. I think what we're kind of getting at, we've seen what's happened over the last few months with some of these school shootings. First and foremost, absolutely horrendous. You know, my heart goes out to those families and to the individuals that were injured. It's absolutely horrendous. But when we're looking at policies, we need to make sure that, again, we're not going after law-abiding citizens, people who follow the law. We need to go after the criminals and the bad actors. And we see it in our district, and, you know, specifically when it comes to the border and some of the issues with the criminal activity that comes up and down I-95. I've talked with a few of the sheriffs, and they've had multiple occasions where they've found weapons cached in a vehicle that's just been stuck on the side of 95 so that they can try to go grab it and get down there. We need to be smart on this. But one of the things that's really interesting is in Congress, we've seen time and time again, the Democrats on one side, they've passed legislation, or they've refused to pass legislation that would actually help with mental illnesses, mental health. Look, I'm a veteran. I have a lot of buddies who returned from overseas that are still hurt. Not just here on the outside, but up in here. The fact that we don't have the resources, a guy I went to college with was a Marine. I was an Army guy, and they made fun of me, yes. But one of the guys I went to college with, the funniest, the nicest kid in the world, and his twin brother found him dead, committed suicide after his time in Afghanistan. Our service members need this mental health issue addressed, and it has to be open and talked about. But again, we don't want it it oftentimes gets stigmatized. So ensuring that we're having the funding at the federal level to make sure that mental health is actually taken care of is a good start. But the Democrats, again, on multiple occasions, you know, they've voted for legislation that would defund our law enforcement. When we have SROs that are in our schools right now that are doing God's work, thank God for that SRO that was down in Georgia. He was able to save quite a few lives from what I understand. And let's be honest, I had an SRO in high school. We looked up to him. He was a great recruiting tool for law enforcement when our law enforcement community and our professional community are at an all-time low when it talked about having law enforcement. You know, I talked with a lot of the sheriffs, and we talked recruiting. They always say, so what do you need if I become your next member of Congress? What can I get you when I get up there? And they go, people. And I'm like, I can't do that. But yeah, making sure that mental health is a top priority, making sure that we're making sure our law enforcement are taken care of. Those are the good starting points for us. Again, this comes back to common sense solutions, the common problems. We need to make sure that the people that are allowed to have their weapons have them, but the people that shouldn't. And making sure that criminals, and last point is, you know, there was some legislation that was put forward that said that individuals that committed crimes with a weapon would have a higher sentence than someone who wouldn't. For instance, burglary or armed robbery. They voted against that. So you have to de-incentivize these individuals from doing bad acts with weapons, and they voted against that. So again, it's common sense solutions, and I think that's where we really need to make sure that our law-abiding citizens are actually able to do what they need to do and make sure that criminals don't have weapons in their hands.
Thank you. Now we'll move to the questions on topics that Mr. Anderson wanted to discuss. The first topic is the economy. And the question is, what will you do in Congress to address the nation's debt?
Whoa, okay. 35 trillion of it, I guess. Look, folks, the economy right now is a top priority of mine. That's truly the number one thing. You know, I become the next member of Congress here in the 7th Congressional District. It has to be day one, the thing that we fix. I'll tell you a little story, and I have to brag because Ella, she's in here somewhere. Ella is a little girl. Ella, how old are you, 10? Yeah. Thank you. So Ella wrote me a letter back in March, and I went to my P.O. box in Fredericksburg, opened it up, there's a whole bunch of junk mail in there, as usual, and I found this very colorful letter in there. And I pulled it out, and I started reading it, and Ella had one line in there that really stuck out to me. She said, and I'm paraphrasing Ella, I apologize, she said, "Derrick, can you fix the government so my mom can buy snacks again?" Ella's 10 years old, and she sees what we're feeling right now. Feel what we're feeling here, not only in the Commonwealth, but in the 7th District. You know, right now, the average family here in the Commonwealth of Virginia is paying about $1,100 more a month to live. That's not to go to fancy restaurants in downtown Fredericksburg. That's not to go on cruises. That's just to live. $1,100. I am currently unemployed. I know you said I was a practicing attorney. I'm doing this full time. I don't have $1,100 a month to just fork over. Right now, about a quarter of Virginians, 25% of Virginians, are delinquent on their credit cards. Why? Because now, instead of paying for big purchases with their credit cards, they're using it at the gas pump, and they're using it to buy groceries, and they can't afford the interest rates, and it keeps piling on and piling on. Look, folks, when I go to the gas station or go to the grocery store, my mom, who's sitting right here, she FaceTimes me every single time. And she asked me, "Derrick, can you please fix the fact that eggs are $3.75? I'm like, "Mom, I'm trying. I'm not even an elected official yet. I'm trying my best." But you don't get, it doesn't matter if you're a Democrat. It doesn't matter if you're a Republican. It doesn't matter if you're an independent. When you go to the grocery store, you go to the gas station, you don't get to pick a little button and you get a discount. We're all feeling this right now. In fact, you know, people that make roughly $100,000 to $200,000 a year right now can't afford, that's average salary, can't afford an average house. That's not how it used to be. People right now, about 35% of people in Virginia are living paycheck to paycheck, meaning they're able to pay for their groceries, gas, and what have you. And I tell this story about Ella because I went over to Ella's mom's house, and mom and dad were out front. I walked up and I was like, Derrick, just wanted to say hi to Ella. And we talked in detail. And one thing that stuck out with Ella's parents to me was she said, "I can't catch up." She can't put money away for their kids' education. We were talking about college education earlier. They can't put money away for savings for their retirement and their future. You know, 25% of retirees are going back to work right now because they can't afford to live. So we got to get the economy back on track. So we need to balance our budget, right? We can't continue to just having a ridiculous amount of debt over and over again. We need to cut spending. Spending has gotten out of control. You know, the Biden-Harris administration, when they took over, they spent $7 trillion right off the bat. Look, folks, the more the government is spending, the less that's in your pocket. That's just the fact. That's the fact of the matter. So we got to cut spending. We got to make sure taxes are lower because the more money that people have in the pocket, they're able to go and spend for things. We got to get inflation under control. And we got to get our U.S. energy back up and moving. And that'll be the number one thing that we can do to get our country back on track when it comes financially. Specifically, you know, we've had legislation passed in the House at least that would get us back to being energy independent, allowing us the opportunity to make energy here and sell it overseas. Instead, we're buying it from folks overseas. So we've got bills that are sitting there on the border and on energy, but they're sitting over in the Senate right now. So again, we've got to get those things, because I can tell you, I go to local grocery stores, I go to convenience store. There was one I went to about 2 weeks ago over off Ely's Ford Road. I was talking to the owner over there, and I said, "How's it going?" He said, "I'm going to have to start raising prices on things. I can't afford to keep taking the hit." I said, "Well, what's the issue?" And he said, "Well, you know, things cost more, but electricity." He's like, the cost of electricity is out of control and it's killing us right now. So again, folks, I want to get up there and be your next congressman so we can make it more affordable. It's a basic concept. It's my number one issue for the people here in the 7th District. And again, you know, I know it because I feel it. My mom calls me, my family calls me, my grandmother calls me. God bless my grandmother on 4th of July. She usually provides all the food, and she had to have people bring stuff this time because she just couldn't afford to do it. So again, we got to get our economy back on track, make it more affordable for everyone to live, and I think it's a top priority of mine.
Thank you. Next issue is immigration. How should America address the immigration issue?
There's 3 aspects of immigration that hit to me. One, we need to make sure that we're getting our communities back safe again. And here's what I have to say. So I just had the opportunity to actually go see the border. I was there for a few hours. I went there for a day and came back. Seeing what's going on down there firsthand is truly, truly terrifying. For instance, and I'll give you a few stories just so you can know what I got to see, but as you're walking down, you can see the Obama air wall, you can see the Trump air wall, and then it stops. And there's a mountain ridge right there, and I was like, what's that? And they said, well, that's when they stopped building the wall when Biden and Harris took over. And I said, okay. Right at the end of that mountaintop, there's a little bit of a ridge, there's a whole bunch of stones up there, and I thought it was just, you know, someone threw a whole bunch of stones. That's the cartel's observation point. So they sit on top of that observation point and can see all the way down, miles upon miles of border, and they're able to call in the cartels to get people across. One of the sheriff's office, while I was down there, talked to me, said that there was an individual who had gotten across the border and assaulted a 63-year-old woman, left her dead, left her for dead. That individual had been convicted twice already of felony. I mean, the stories that I got to see down there truly, truly give you an idea of what's going on at our southern border, and it's absolutely horrendous. We have, 10 plus million, that's what we know of illegal immigrants that have come into our country. Look, we love immigration. We want people to come here legally, though. We want to make sure we have a high wall, but we want a wide gate for folks to be able to come in. But when we see what's going on and how it's devastating our communities, look what just happened at Marine Corps Base Quantico. You had 2 legal immigrants of Jordanian descent attempt to breach the front gate of Marine Corps Base Quantico. If that's not a national security issue, I don't know what is. There's 200 plus people that have come across the border illegally that are on our national security watch list. That's what we know of. Those two individuals that were attempting to breach the front gate, posing as Amazon drivers, they were released. We don't know who they are. We don't know who they're affiliated with. We don't know anything, but they're back in our community. I talked to a lot of the sheriffs too, and I talked to one sheriff without outing him. I asked him, I said, what's the number 1 issue that you guys are facing in your county? And he said, fentanyl. This is a rural county, folks. This isn't, up towards Prince William. This is one of the more rural counties in our district. And he says, oftentimes, over and over again, they get a health and welfare call, and they have to send a law enforcement over to check in at someone who's overdosed on fentanyl. Here in Virginia, here in the Commonwealth, about 5 people are overdosing a day on fentanyl. It's truly a killer. It's poisoning our communities. You can hear some of the Attorney General and some of our elected officials talk about the stories that they hear over and over from family members whose daughter or son got a pill from a friend not knowing what it was, and the next day they didn't wake up. It's truly, truly an issue here. So it's not only just a public safety thing, it's from the criminal aspect, but it's also a resources thing. Again, I speak a lot with our law enforcement, our local sheriffs, and one of the things they tell me about quite often is that the illegal immigration problem is not only a national security, not only a public safety, but it's a resources issue. So our roads, our hospitals, under the current administration, we have homeless veterans, but we're giving free credit cards and free stuff to illegal immigrants that are coming into this country. And again, we want people to come here from other countries, but we want you to do it legally so we know who you are and what you're doing here. It's a simple concept, but some people don't agree with that, I guess. But a few things that we can do to fix that is, the Biden-Harris administration have been saying some things which they could do right now. They had 90 plus executive orders that they either implemented or they revoked in their first 100 days that got us to where we're at right now. They have the power to do it because they caused the problem as it is. They could very much fix this problem with executive order right now, but they're not. So again, this comes back to a public safety issue. These are national security issues that we're having. Look, I think we need to make sure that our communities are safe because again, I talk to a lot of our local law enforcement and it's something as simple as now they're having to pull people over that don't have driver's license and then we're not funding ICE and there's no coordination with local law enforcement and ICE and DHS. So again, go back to ending catch and release, put the Remain in Mexico policy back in place, make sure we finish the wall. I can tell you the wall does do some work in making sure that people can't just walk across our border. It still has issues, but we could build a wall and that would help us prevent these national security issues, this criminal activity, the fentanyl. I can't stress enough the fentanyl and how much it's devastating our communities right now.
The third issue is veterans. What veteran issues do you think are not being heard, and what would you do to make them heard?
As a veteran, I will make sure that they're heard because all of my veteran buddies know where I live and they will find me. I see a few of them out there. I see some Green Beret buddies of mine up here not even paying attention. I see. Look, the veteran issue is a huge deal. You heard me talk about the mental health issues. Look, and I'm probably preaching to the choir because I see a whole bunch of veteran hats out there, but so I get my health care from the VA. I'm very glad I have it. One of the things that I noticed when I first got my health care from the VA, and there's been, let me be very clear, there's been some really good stuff that's happened in the VA, and there's always been improvements, which I appreciate, but I remember when I started getting my first appointments and I would get on the phone and I would make the call, and it would ring, and it would ring, and then it would go to an operator. And then the operator would say, what can I help you with? I'm like, I just need to make my primary care appointment to go X, Y, and Z. And they said, one moment, transfer, ring, ring. And then someone hung up on me. So I called back again. And then they transferred me to another line that went to a voicemail that I don't know who the heck it was. And then I did it again. I spent an hour and a half on the phone just trying to make a basic appointment. That kind of stuff shouldn't be happening, especially if one of our veterans is having a mental health crisis, an issue, they need help. The red tape that's there at the VA, we need to make sure we clean that up. We need to make it more accessible for veterans to get their care, specifically when, I've had both private health care and I've also had VA health care, and I can tell you there's a stark difference between the two. But I appreciate the fact that I got my VA care. Look, we're talking about 20 years of war, folks. We got veterans from across the spectrum, not only in Iraq or Afghanistan, but Vietnam veterans, Gulf War veterans. We've got a slew of veterans, and that is their primary care. That's how they're able to get their health care. And so it's important to have someone that's a champion up there. It's one of the committees that I would like to get on when I get up to Washington, D.C., because you can actually get a lot accomplished in the committees and start cutting through some of this to make it just easier for our VA and easier for our veterans to be able to have access to the healthcare. And give credit, there was something, their online portal, which is a phenomenal portal, right? It allows you to direct message your healthcare provider. Problem is that my healthcare provider only comes in, I think, once or twice a month at 8 o'clock in the morning. And I don't know about y'all, but when we're working and we have kids and we have families and all those things, you might not necessarily be able to go that one day between the hours of 8 and noon. So there needs to be more accessibility, availability for our veterans, because again, after 20 years of war, our veterans don't deserve just good health care, they deserve great health care. And so that is one of my, again, another one of the things I want to champion when I get up there, making sure not only the medical benefits, but also making sure that the benefits that they have already earned are able to be taken advantage of.
Thank you. How are we doing for time? Do we have time for another question?
4 minutes.
4 minutes.
Thank you for giving me the yellow card.
Okay. All right. I'll just ask a quick follow-up then.
Sure.
You talked about on the issue of cost of education. What's your stand on student loans? Should those be forgiven?
So look, when it comes to the government trying to pay for everything, there has to be some give and take with this. Look, we have to look at taxpayer dollars and what they're able to actually afford as a country. We just mentioned that we're 35 trillion dollars in debt right now, and now the Biden-Harris administration are saying they want to pay student loans back from what money? Like, the money just doesn't grow on trees when we have an economy that's fledgling right now. Look, I mean, there are opportunities. Not everyone has to go to school, right? Like, I was fortunate enough to do it, and I did a deployment to Iraq, and that's how I was able to pay off the rest of my school debt, was from going to Iraq. So I think that there's common sense solutions to this, but when the federal government starts getting involved with a lot of these things, especially our educational systems, they tend to screw it up. I'll just be quite frank about it. They get too hands in the weeds with it, when at the end of the day, if you want to go to college, you should be able to try to come up with a plan to be able to afford college. Like my fiance, who is sitting right up here, she just finished law school. It was expensive. But we came up with a plan that made the most sense for everyone. But again, we can't continue to have the federal government continue to try to bail everyone out for everything. But and at the end of the day, not everyone necessarily needs to go to college. It's trade schools. There's STEM opportunities. My brother was a truck driver, so I think that there's other opportunities out there in making sure folks have a plan.
Okay. You probably have another minute or two, but I think we'll go. That's probably not enough time to answer a tough question or even an easy question. So we'll go to your closing remarks now.
Yeah. Having me today, having the opportunity to speak. Again, hats off to the Fredericksburg Free Press, to everyone involved in this. This was a feat, but it's so great to see all the people out in the audience, seeing friends, family, people that I've known my entire life. So, again, folks, I'm a guy from Spotsylvania County that wants to have common sense solutions to common sense problems. I joined the Army after graduating from Virginia Tech, and had the opportunity to serve my country. Being able to serve multiple deployments overseas and come back to your home is truly awesome. I get the great opportunity of potentially representing my mom. I don't know how many people have that opportunity, but it's something that I look forward to. And I think it's a time and place in our country right now where we don't need the divisiveness. We need to start making sure that we have common sense solutions, because I'm telling you, the economy is not going well right now. I personally cannot afford, nor can my family afford, another 4 years of this type of economy. We have to get our economy back on track. We have to make it more affordable for people to live. We also need to make sure our communities are safe. We need to make sure the border is secure, because again, we talked in pretty good depth about the border, but the crisis is real. Every state right now is a border state because of how the border is being run. Whether it's criminal activity, whether it's fentanyl, whether it's our national security risks. And look, now more than ever across the world, our enemies are emboldened. We talked about it in detail about what Russia is doing, what Iran is doing, what China is doing. We need strong leadership. We need strong leadership in Washington, D.C. If you want someone to represent you, you want someone to be a fighter for you in Washington, D.C., to fight for you all, I think it should be someone that's one of you. Someone who grew up in this community, someone who knows that if I do a bad job in Washington, D.C., my friends and family will find me, and they will hold me accountable. And I think more than ever, accountability is so crucial, of making sure our elected officials go up there, when they come back, they don't get a clean slate, they get a stern talking to by their constituents. And that's what I want to do. I want to represent the people here in the 7th Congressional District. My opponent is going to come on here, and he's going to give his discussion on things, but he's focused on his past. I'm focused on your future. I'm focused on the future of the people here in the 7th Congressional District, because I care. I truly care. So it'd be an honor not only to earn your support in November, I guess early voting starts this week, but I'd be honored to earn your support. It'd be an honor to not only be the next congressman here in Virginia's 7th Congressional District, but to be able to represent the people that raised me. So thank you again so much.
He is the Democratic nominee for Virginia's 7th Congressional District seat. Mr. Vindman is a father, an immigrant, and a veteran. In uniform, he served our country as a paratrooper in the 82nd Airborne, a prosecutor in the JAG Corps, and he deployed to Iraq. He and his wife Cindy are raising their 2 kids, Max and Maddie, in Prince William County. Now, Mr. Vindman says he is running for Congress to continue his life of service, to restore our rights, defend democracy, and protect the American dream for every working family. Mr. Vindman, the floor is yours for your opening comments.
Thank you so much. And first of all, let me thank the organizers and this audience. This is a great opportunity to have robust democratic discourse. And I look forward to making sure that we have a clear idea of where each of us stand. So, I'm a husband, a father, an Iraq War veteran. I came to this country as an immigrant, 4 years old, my family of 5. We had less than $800 in our pocket. We had each other and the American dream. My first night in the United States, we slept on luggage at JFK Airport. But with the family, our faith in the American dream, and a few decades of hard work, I'm pleased to say that, frankly, I'm living the American dream. And I want to make sure that American dream is available to all Americans. When I was old enough, I joined the Army. I joined the Army out of a profound sense of gratitude to this country that had taken us in as refugees from a Soviet communist dictatorship. I was young, but I know what it's like from friends and family and relatives that have come over, what it's like to live in a communist dictatorship. And so I want to make sure that we don't backslide in that direction. I joined the Army. I had the privilege of leading some of America's finest. We jumped out of airplanes. I was an infantry officer, and when we jumped out of airplanes, it didn't matter whether we were Democrats or Republicans, black, white, what part of the country. We had a mission, we performed that mission. And that is the mindset that I bring to all of my tasks, mission focus. After having the privilege of serving with soldiers in the infantry, I transitioned to the JAG Corps. And I became a prosecutor. I prosecuted drug cases, sexual assault cases, fraud cases, investigated homicides, and I enforced law. It was a privilege for me to be able to protect my community. At the time, it was Fort Hood, the busiest court-martial jurisdiction in the world. It was a tough job. It was a tough job. I had 20 prosecutors, and we enforced the law. We held those that violated the law accountable, and we protected victims and made sure they received justice. When I deployed to Iraq, I advised commanders in the field on the most sensitive matters. I also had the opportunity to serve in the White House, and it was a dream for me. I got to serve in the most meaningful way I could, advising the most senior leaders in the military and strategic matters. And when I was tested, I met the challenge and did what was right. I retired from the Army a couple of years ago, and I pursued, as a person of action, I continued to investigate war crimes in Ukraine. I did 14 trips to Ukraine between June of 22 to October of last year, investigating war crimes under a State Department funded program. And it was extremely rewarding work. It ended up in indictments in the International Criminal Court, arrest warrants, on the Russian General Staff, Chief of the General Staff, and the former Minister of Defense. But as we got to the late part of last year, a few things became obvious to me. One was that this country was at a crossroads, and I had to, as a person of action, I couldn't sit on the sidelines when, frankly, the stakes were so high. The stakes are high nationally, obviously, and we'll get into some of that, but they're also high for our community. I mean, the idea of rights being taken away, I spent 25 years in the Army defending Americans' rights and freedoms, and those are under threat. After Dobbs, women lost the right to have reproductive health care. That's a major issue for me. We have a need for safe, high-quality public schools. Frankly, one of the big topics here is I commuted up 95, I slept up 95, I know what that lifestyle is like. And so fixing 95, our infrastructure there, making sure we have 5G all throughout the district, these are the topics that seize me, that affect me as a husband, a father, and that I want to work on for the voters in this district. Thank you.
Thank you. First question is about education. How can we address the rising cost of a college education in this country?
The dad of a third-year student at William & Mary, this is a personal issue for me. Look, the cost of education has gotten too high. It's outpaced even inflation, which tells you that this is a serious problem, and it's a problem that has spanned decades. Democratic and Republican administrations have failed to address this issue. And there are a number of things, frankly, we need to do. This is, partially an economic issue, partially a pipeline issue, but the bottom line is I feel this pain personally, and I know my friends and neighbors feel this pain. In a few years, I'll have a daughter that's going to college as well. So we need to control the cost of education. A couple of ideas. One, first of all, college may not be the right choice for everybody. So we need to have a pipeline into the trades. I've been privileged to have been endorsed by, I don't know, probably dozens of unions at this point, certainly 8 dozen. And the trades are a respectable way to make a living. I think we need to make sure that workers that do work in the trades are respected. So we need to make sure we have a pipeline into the trades. My son, before he went to college, he wanted to go into a carpentry program. That's why he chose the school he went to, because he wanted to get a carpentry program. And I was like, hey, go ahead and go to the carpentry program. I'm perfectly happy with that, but also make sure you take the college classes, because one of the things I learned is that you want to make sure that you have all the options available to you. If you want to go to college, you've taken the college classes that will prepare you for college. And if you want to go into the trades, more power to you. There's a path to the trades. I think one of the ways we make college affordable is, frankly, student loan relief. For instance, if you serve in public service, you have student loan forgiveness. That program was broken for a very long time, but frankly, over the course of the last 3.5 years, it's been fixed. Thousands upon thousands of people are getting student loan repayment based on their service. So I think this is a program that we need to expand. We need to make sure that more people qualify. I think it's too limited right now. But we need to think about these things in a concrete way, address the prices, and frankly, also make community college more affordable. I think that's a great pathway as well.
Thank you. The next topic is foreign policy. What is your position on U.S. involvement in the wars in Ukraine and Israel?
Yep. So look, I spent 25 years in the Army. I worked at the White House. I'm a bit of a nerd on this topic, and I'm happy to nerd out for the next 5 or 10 minutes maybe. I published articles in Foreign Affairs magazine, Foreign Policy magazine, immediately in the aftermath of the war, the major war starting in Ukraine, because the war has been going on since 2014, including under the former administration. But in the major phase of the war that started in February 22, I published an article that called Ukraine, the attack on Ukraine, an attack on the international system. It puts the fundamental precepts of the United Nations, this idea that countries cannot change their borders by force. They cannot attack a smaller neighbor, the rule of the jungle, something that our grandparents fought for in World War II, the order established. Russia violated that. Russia violated that, and now we have the first major war in Ukraine since World War II. Like I said, I've been to Ukraine 14 times because I look at Ukraine from 2 perspectives. One is the humanitarian perspective. The people in Ukraine are suffering terribly. I've been throughout the country. I've been to Kharkiv, which is the second largest city. It's also 18 miles from the border. Every day now, they're getting a constant rain of these glide bombs. 500 kilogram, 1,000, that's, in English, that's 2,000 pounds in a 1,000-pound round. But, you know, they're being rained down on towns and villages. The Russians are attacking schools. They're attacking hospitals. Frankly, it's barbaric. And so there's a humanitarian perspective, undoubtedly, but there's also a national security perspective that, frankly, to me, is equally as important. Allowing Russia to succeed in Ukraine, which is exactly what is being proposed by the leadership of the Republican Party, taking this isolationist view, withdrawing into ourselves, doesn't make sense. We're not in the 1930s. We withdraw into ourselves. You know who fills that vacuum? China, Russia, Iran, North Korea. We cannot withdraw into ourselves. The bottom line is we have to support Ukraine robustly. We have to make sure that they're in a position to defeat Russia on the battlefield. That is the only way we get the Russians to the negotiating table. That's number one. We got to push back hard. I think this administration has done, frankly, a great job in making sure we have additional members in NATO. We've strengthened, and we have to remember those relationships make us stronger. Are we powerful? Are we strong? Yes, but we're stronger together. We're more stronger together than we are by ourselves. The second thing is Israel. Look, I'm Jewish. I'm a Jewish refugee from the Soviet Union. What happened in Israel on October 7th was the worst massacre of Jews since the Holocaust. There's no context for it. It was a terrorist attack. It was wrong. That's one. Two, the Israelis have a right to defend themselves. Period. End of story. I advise commanders on how to do that at the highest level. And frankly, in the White House, I advised senior leaders at the strategic level. So they are allowed to defend themselves. They're within their rights to defend themselves. But three, they must do so in the context of international law, and frankly, be held to the same standard that we hold ourselves to. They're doing that, by and large. The Israelis have a tough fight. It's an urban environment, and it's horrendous. They're constantly being attacked by Hezbollah, Hamas, Iranian proxies, and the bottom line is they can respond, they can act in self-defense, they can defend themselves, but they have to do so in the context of international law. So that's the bottom line. It applies to us, it applies to every other country in the world. By and large, just like we complied with international law, we have some notable lapses. We have people that are frankly serving time in Leavenworth that were prosecuted by my peers in the Army JAG Corps. But it was not systematic, and that's the key element. I could talk about war crimes and genocide and all these things for the entire time, if you'd like.
I was just trying to make sure I understood
No worries.
your answers. I wasn't challenged. Okay, next issue is health care. Affordable health care has been a topic of debate. What are your views on America's current health care policies?
Look, healthcare, again, is too expensive. I think the Affordable Care Act is critically important, provides care to tens of millions of Americans. It sounds like my opponent and I are in agreement on that point. That was my takeaway. But in any case, the Affordable Care Act is critically important. We need to maintain that. We need to strengthen that. We need to stop with the constant efforts to repeal the Affordable Care Act and frankly cover more people. We also need to make sure that what's happening now is you have things like the price of insulin, price of drugs that are being negotiated. Insulin used to be extremely expensive. It's a life-saving drug. It's absolutely necessary for people to live. Now it's $35. Talk about lowering prices. I mean, that's critical. That's what we need to continue to do. And we need to expand that to a whole host of drugs. So we need to empower the government to continue to negotiate, and I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. The next issue is the Second Amendment. Are you in favor of any limits to gun ownership, and to what extent?
So let me start with the fact that I am a responsible gun owner. I have guns. I've owned guns for many years, rifles, pistols, and they're in a safe. So the long and short is I am not looking to take away people's guns. I enjoy going out to shoot and hunt. I've gone shooting with my son. There's a great place in Manassas, Bull Run, great place for five stand and shotgun sport. I'm not looking to take away people's guns, but the long and short is that gun crime, gun violence is a major problem, and there are common sense solutions that 87% of Americans support. Enforcing red flag laws, closing gun show loopholes, safe storage requirements. These are things that, again, the vast majority of Americans are in support of, and there's a small lobby, unfortunately, that has captured the extreme membership in the Republican Party, and that is forcing us to live under sort of a reign of terror. It should not be easier to get an assault rifle than it is to get a license. And the law changed, frankly, when I was in law school. The law changed. It used to be that the Second Amendment was not recognized as an individual right. It was recognized as a right of a militia. The Supreme Court changed that provision. It's the law of the land, and it will remain the law of the land. I'm not interested in taking away people's guns. I just want to make sure people are safer from gun violence. I had a conversation actually with the police department in Dumfries. And the chief there told me, you know, one of the ways that guns are on the street illegally is the fact that people put their guns in cars, right? Guns are being stolen from cars. I think there's an education component to this about why this is such a bad idea. In general, educating gun owners, I think safety standards, safes, incentives for safes, these are, and the provisions that I talked about for ensuring that red flag laws are enforced, gun show loopholes closed, those are the things that I would focus on in Congress.
Thank you. Now we'll move on to the three topics that you selected. The question is, do you think abortion policies should be left up to individual states, or there should be a national law?
Look, this is a critical question. Over 50% of the U.S. population is women. This is a healthcare issue. My wife's cousin is an OBGYN. We had a great canvas launch we did on Saturday where she talked about the medical interventions for abortion. What used to be a right prior to Dobbs has been taken away. So for me, I have a fundamental problem with this. There was a time, you know, I spent 25 years in the Army defending American rights and freedoms, and they're being taken away. They're being reduced right now. I've got a serious problem with that. The right to have an abortion, the right to IVF, the right to contraception, these are all things that are under assault. We have to ensure that we return to Roe v. Wade as the law of the land, and I would be in favor of national legislation for that. When we talk about returning this issue to the states, what we're really saying, instead of having a constitutional right, which we had, what we're really saying is that doctors and women are going to have a politician, basically, in that exam room. And the politician is going to be in a position to decide whether an abortion is medically necessary. Like, for instance, my sister-in-law, she had a series of ectopic pregnancies. Well, the medical intervention for that, and if they continue on, the woman's life is in danger, the medical intervention for that is considered an abortion. There were two women, there was a story that came out today in Georgia, who lost their lives because they did not have reproductive health care. That is the place that we find ourselves today. That is the place we find ourselves today. No woman wants to have an abortion in ninth month. That's just not true. I trust women. I'm married to a very smart woman. She's a molecular geneticist. She keeps me straight. We've been married for 26 years. I have a daughter, 14-year-old daughter. I have nieces that are around the same age. And I want to make sure that they have the same rights and they have access to the medical care that they deserve. And so I would enshrine Roe v. Wade as a law of land, and I would vote against any national ban on the right to an abortion. It's a freedom issue for me.
Thank you. The next topic is Project 2025.
Actually, let me just say one more thing on that last one. Look, I'm a husband, I'm a father of two. I love kids. Frankly, kids are more fun than adults most of the time. So, I am all about making sure that this idea of life doesn't just stop with protection of embryos, but continues on through Americans' lives. And I think that's part of what's lost these days, is that, we have to ensure that kids, once they're born, have access to medical care, have access to schools, can live a reasonable life. And that's where this conversation needs to go. Basic medical health care, and then taking care of kids after they're born as well. Thank you for that.
Thank you. I think you're doing good on time, so. Project 2025. What specific parts in Project 2025 do you disagree with?
Almost 900 pages. And there are some real doozies in there, okay? It's everything from eliminating overtime pay. Eliminating overtime pay for hardworking Americans. These are jobs, typically blue-collar jobs. White-collar jobs are not eligible for overtime pay, typically. So I think I have a problem with that, a serious problem. And if we weren't allowed to bring the entire binder with me, I would have flipped to the right pages, but in any case, it's the reductions to Social Security and Medicare. There are reductions to Social Security and Medicare in the plan. There are reductions to veterans' medical benefits. Talk about taking care of veterans. That's a major issue. This idea of Project 2025 as a major issue, we're not manufacturing it. I go to events all the time, whether it's church or whether it's a meet and greet, and I ask people, have they heard of Project 2025? And invariably, in the room, I could do it right now, but I won't. People have heard of this. They're concerned about this manifesto for a second administration under the former president. And they're very concerned about these items that I've talked about the reductions to health care and disability benefits for veterans. I think I'm about to have a Mike Pence moment if this fly lands on me. But in any case, the one I think that I prefer to focus on is this one. It's this idea of Schedule F. And the reason why is because when I worked, Schedule F is the idea of politicizing and eliminating the civil service as it exists now. This idea actually came up when I worked at the White House. I had the privilege, as I said before, working on the National Security Council, and every executive order, every piece of paper that went to a department or agency, to the National Security Advisor, to the President, went through a legal advisor. And so I looked at many of these executive orders, including this one for Schedule F. And it's an idea that was going to be implemented and was actually rolled back in the current administration. So let me describe it for you. You have tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of hardworking civil servants. These are people that are dedicated to their American people. 80% of them live outside of the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area. 20% live in this area, in CD7, and other parts of Northern Virginia and Maryland that are in close proximity. So we're talking about many thousands. 15% of Virginia's 7th Congressional District is federal government employees. Another 6% are contractors. These are high-paying jobs, and the idea is to eliminate them. Can you imagine what that would do to the economy in this area? Tens of thousands of high-paying jobs eliminated. Talk about one way to like reduce housing prices. I mean, you would tank the economy. It would be outrageous. It would be terrible. The second thing is you're taking these hardworking civil servants that worked for decades, and it's fundamentally unfair to take away their jobs if they do not swear fealty, an oath to the next president. And maybe it's a Democrat or maybe it's a Republican next time, but it's fundamentally wrong. We actually had this system of patronage about 200 years ago under Andrew Jackson. It was bad, so we fixed it for the last 200 years for the most part. Let's not go back 200 years. So, we want to look forward. We don't want to go back. And the third thing is it makes us fundamentally unsafe. You're talking about civil servants, whether they're working at the Defense Intelligence Agency or other three-letter agencies or FBI, any one of these agencies that are in the national security world, and you're going to replace them with political hacks. I've worked with some political hacks when I was in the previous administration, and it's not good for national security. We want people that have built decades of experience in understanding and perceiving threats. We want people that understand what China is up to, or Russia is up to, or Iran, or North Korea. And it's not going to be the person brought in that swears the oath of loyalty. So it makes us weaker. It will wreck the economy in this region, which I am laser focused on, and it's fundamentally unfair.
What issues do you think are ripe for bipartisan success?
Look, I guess the first thing I would say is the mindset that I bring to this, and this is the idea of it doesn't matter when you're jumping out of airplanes whether you're a Democrat or Republican. You're mission focused, and this mission focused mindset is the mindset that I would bring to the job in Congress. There are lots of bipartisan issues that we can focus on. I think we can get Democrats and Republicans to agree that traffic on I-95 is crazy. Okay, that's one topic, and there's a bipartisan fix to that. I think working on that piece of infrastructure, just to focus on that, it's going to be something not only just expanding the roadway, but making it multimodal, like making light rail come down. I've spoken to local leaders in Fredericksburg and throughout the region. I think that there's a hunger for light rail to come all the way down the 95 corridor. It would alleviate traffic, and frankly, we deserve it. We're just 20, 30 miles outside the nation's capital, the greatest nation in the world. But our infrastructure is frankly not that good. I've been all around the world. Poland used to be under a communist dictatorship. Their rail system is frankly a lot better than ours. I think that's a little bit embarrassing. So it's rail, and it's rail down the 95 corridor, improving 95, but it's also improving 5G all throughout the district. We have 3,100 square miles in the 7th Congressional District, and I think I've visited every corner of the district, even the 35 voters that are in the one district in Albemarle. And I know that during COVID, there were students in the school that didn't have access to sufficient internet, and so they had to sit in the McDonald's parking lot in order to do their homework. And I find that, again, unacceptable for the people in the 7th Congressional District. So we need to work on 5G. I think that's a bipartisan solution. There's also the issue in Greene County with the fact that their reservoir is insufficient. I think we can come together. That is a county that is very conservative, but it has needs. And my job is to service the needs of the entire district. Working on the reservoir in Greene County, working on the aquifer and in King George. So again, I think infrastructure is one area we can start. We can work together. I think there are leaders, frankly, on the other side that are interested in national security. There are folks, that very much in the conservative camp that are concerned about what's going on in Ukraine. And I think we have a lot of work to do there. I think that we need to be a lot more assertive about our national security interests abroad. Maybe I don't sound like a typical Democrat, but again, I've served 25 years in the Army, I served in the White House. I take this issue very seriously. I think we're in a period of extended competition around the world. And I'm concerned that there by some really smart people talking about a potential war with China in 2027. That would happen in the next administration. It would happen in the next term. I served 25 years in the military, but I also have a nephew that's in the 82nd now. And so this is very personal to me. In Ukraine, if we are not strong in Ukraine, I'm concerned that in 3 to 5 years, a much more emboldened, a stronger Russia. There's an old expression that a former, I think it's national security advisor said that Russia without Ukraine is a country, with Ukraine is an empire. We don't want to see a resurgent Russian Empire on the borders of Poland, where then we would have our own boots on the ground instead of the Ukrainians. So national security is another area, infrastructure. I hope that we can actually come together in education. I know that Project 2025 has this idea of getting rid of the Department of Education. And every part of the government can stand for an increase. But I have 2 kids that I've raised in Prince William public schools. I'm a product of public schools. My wife is a product of public schools. We went to public university. We got a great education. And I want to make sure that my kids have a great education, and that all the children in this district have a great education, because we're on the cusp of an AI revolution. We're still not quite done dealing with the information revolution, but we're going to have another cusp of an AI revolution. We have all of these sort of pressing issues that we have to educate our kids on. And I actually worked on emerging technology in the White House. That was part of my portfolio. So, these are areas that I frankly have a deep understanding of and that I can make a contribution in when I serve in Congress.
It's not following the rules, and I'm not distracting candidates. So, and I applaud you for working through that. I think it may have distracted me, though. Did we talk about the healthcare issue?
We did.
We did, okay. Maybe
we could talk about it again, if you'd like.
Okay. So how are we doing on time?
7 minutes, okay.
Okay, we have 7 minutes. All right, so there's time for one more question. Here's one from an audience member. Recently, there have been proposals for Congress to require term limits and code of ethics for Supreme Court justices. How do you feel about that?
Well, it might not surprise you as a government ethics attorney that I think that's a good idea. I had some interesting experiences at the White House. I dealt with some really senior individuals. And I took ethics rules very seriously. I continue to take ethics rules very seriously. And compliance is important. And I had an official that had stock in a large aerospace company that frankly overlapped with his portfolio. And he was, again, a very senior official. And I said, look, I've looked at this, I've looked at the rules, and you're gonna need to sell it because it's a conflict of interest. And frankly, he wasn't super happy about it at the time. But like less than a year later, the stock tanked, so I think in the end he was thanking me. No, these rules are critically important. They apply to every part of the federal government. I don't see why the Supreme Court should be excluded. That part doesn't make sense to me. I think they've frankly demonstrated that they're not very good at self-policing, and so some of these rules are very useful. I know the second question was ethics, and so you got me on a roll. What was the first one?
The first one, do you support term limits?
Term limits. Look, I think term limits in general are a good idea. I think if you're in government or in your position too long, some of your ideas get stale. And I will tell you for a fact, my wife has made a term limit for me if this works out. So that's an enforceable term limit because I've already done 25 years in the Army. But the bottom line is I think term limits are important across the board in elected offices and also in appointed office. So I think there's a way to create term limits that does not impinge on the Supreme Court's ability to rule on cases in an impartial manner.
Thank you. Okay, I think that takes care of our question. Now is your chance to give closing remarks. Thank you.
So thank you. I mean, these have been some great questions. I had an opportunity to pontificate on issues of national security and issues of education and healthcare. And frankly, I think in many ways the differences between me and my opponent and his party could not be any different. I am not interested in politicizing the federal civil service. I'm not interested in eliminating the Department of Education. I am very interested in making sure that the people that will live in the 7th Congressional District are taken care of, that costs are reduced. I'm a local father, I'm a husband. I'm sensitive to prices. And I'm pleased to see, frankly, that across the board, I've been, again, across the district, that prices of gas have gone down below $3. And that's a good start. That's where we need to be. That's the direction we need to keep going. And we're doing that because obviously we are now producing more oil, hydrocarbons than we've ever had. We're a net exporter of energy now. That's something that happened under this administration. This idea of an all of the above approach to energy is important as we, again, acknowledge that there's a need to deal with climate change and that it's an existential threat to our humanity and our kids and grandkids. And so, you know, again, after serving 25 years in the Army, I could have done any number of things, but what I wanted to do is continue my service to the people of the 7th Congressional District because I live here, I'm raising my kids here, my friends and family are raising their kids here. The Army told me where to live for decades. And for the better part of a decade, I've lived in this region. And I love this area. You have places like Prince William Forest. You have places like the Neabsco Boardwalk. You have beautiful mountains, rolling hills on the east side, and you have the Potomac River. I love this area. I want to serve the people of this area. And that's why I'm doing this. So thank you.